Hi, I'm Samantha Varner, and this is What's the Plan? Today, we have a great bonus episode for you. This episode is from a recent live panel I hosted with Sarah and Melissa. We talked about what PMOs are actually seeing today. Everything from constant reprioritization, fixed capacity, and understanding that every trade-off is going to come at a cost. We even talk about AI a little bit at the end. Doing more with less is the default for every PMO today. There is constant reprioritization, and the job of a PMO is now to manage those expectations and model those trade-offs at any given moment. Because of the pace of change, organizations have moved on from annual planning. They are now planning quarterly, monthly, and even continuously just to keep up. The obvious is really coming to a head here. The only guarantee is that plans will change, and the PMOs that are going to win are those that understand cost, capacity, and trade-offs. This conversation really digs into the reality of leading a PMO today. I hope you enjoy it. All right, well, let's go ahead and get started. Hi, everyone. My name is Samantha Varner. Super excited to have you today. Today's live session is going to be a panel with myself as moderator, and then with Melissa Fry, who is a manager of technology portfolio planning, if I could speak, with Choice Hotels, and then Sarah Vincent, who is manager of analytics and regional AI strategy with Honda Canada. So I really think this conversation is going to be, well, I hope it's super helpful. We met ahead of time, of course, and had some really good conversations just about, how change is the only thing that's consistent. The fact that things are going to change, that's the only thing that we can predict. So really bringing that conversation to a wider group here, and hopefully getting some takeaways. So, with that said, a few housekeeping items. Of course, if you have questions, if we have time, we are going to answer those during the Q&A session at the end. This session will also be recorded and will be sent out to anyone who has either attended or registered. So if you have to drop early, that's perfectly fine. You'll get the recording. And you'll be able to share it with others if you want to as well. So just a few things there. All right. Well, with that said, welcome, Melissa. Welcome, Sarah. Super excited to have you.
Excited to be here.
Good. Yes, on this lovely spring day that we're having. All right. So Melissa, if you don't mind, do you want to give just like a quick 30-second intro? I know that I just gave your title, but just a brief rundown of what you do at Choice.
Yeah, absolutely. So like Samantha said, I am the manager of technology portfolio planning for Choice Hotels. So we handle the planning and intake for the PMO. My team specifically, we own the front door for all of the new work that comes in, the intake, the prioritization, capacity validation, and then continuously rebalancing that portfolio as things change. So a lot of our focus is enabling leadership decisions so that they have the clear options on our capacity that is always tight.
Of course, of course. And Sarah, what about you?
Yeah, so as Samantha mentioned, I actually lead the analytics and AI, regional AI strategy at Honda Canada. But I sit in the IT organization. So a big part of my role might be around innovation and making sure, we are enabling future state capabilities within the IT organization. I'm also very much accountable and very much a part of our delivery piece of it all, which includes kind of the governance and any of the outcomes. So a big part of my role is also still ensuring management of our staffing, where people are put on projects, and ensuring that their skills are actually developed also for what we're thinking in the future.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, let's go ahead and really just jump right into it. And I want to talk about what's actually changing. What are you seeing today? So whoever wants to go first, what types of changes are impacting you the most currently, today, and what you're foreseeing in the future, but also in the past year?
So I can jump in on that one. So I think for us over the last year, I sit in IT and in automotive, also looking at the AI space. So I see lots of shifts that have happened in our past year. So we're shifting in what we're delivering, the types of projects we're delivering, how we're incorporating like artificial intelligence and that to our projects. But I also am in the cross section of that with the automotive sector, which has had a very interesting year. We've seen a lot of changes, directions and things just due to market uncertainty, tariffs, and supply chain challenges that we've had. So for us last year and going into this year, what we see a more and more of is a frequent mid-cycle changes, reprioritization coming in very quickly. And we're needing to kind of take a pause, look at what programs are shifting and restarting, and then how do we make up the teams to support anything new in a quick pivot like that. So those are the big things impacting on our side.
I would agree. We've faced a lot of the same challenges that Sarah mentioned. With the economy, the market changes. You know, we started the year with a grand plan. We knew exactly what we were going to do for the year, all of our projects, and then things change and market shifts, and we need to be able to react quickly to that. So we needed to bring in more projects that would drive revenue, and those are always the top priority. So we would always have to do our best to find ways to complete those projects, to bring them in. And shuffle things around.
Yeah. Would you say, and I think this would be interesting for both of you, just because of the different industries that you are in, would you say that these changes are really coming from the top and it's a top-down approach, or is it something where it's more like team related and delay related, so more of that bottom-up approach? Where are you finding that that's coming from?
We are mostly finding it from top down.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It's very much a top down, just because it's a shifting market landscape.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of macro factors out there, rather than micro ones. That makes sense.
Yes.
Would you say, I would be really curious to know too, the pace of change. I'm assuming that in, 2025, especially, that pace has increased. Now that we are, going into 3 months into 2026, are you seeing the pace of change increasing even more now, or anticipating that?
I definitely see it a lot more. I've just learned to embrace change. Change is my everyday. And it's one of those things that even with the changes that we make, we're like, okay, this is it. This is the change that we made. We are now set to continue on. But things change so rapidly, and we just need to be able to react to that the best way we can. And one of the biggest problems that we have is when we do start to focus on, okay, this is the exact thing we're going to do, and we pull everyone in, we get our plan together, and then we just start going down that, and then we're like, look, leadership, we have this great plan that we worked out, and they're like, that's great for last week, but for this week we need to change things up a little bit, and we have this new project that came in that we need to work on. And so it's really just learning how to keep up with the speed of things, but things are definitely not slowing down right now.
And I would 100% agree with that. I don't that changing anytime soon in our industry either. So we are very much in that same cycle of looking at 1 week and having to pivot the next, and making sure that like we're enabled in that agility to kind of move.
Yeah. Definitely important. So yeah, like I said in the beginning, the only thing that is consistent and constant and can be expected is that change will be happening all of the time. So let's go ahead and talk about when those things come in and when you have to make those pivots and evaluate, the new priorities, especially mid-plan when you already have that plan in place. How are you responding when those must-do initiatives come down and it's okay, we got to go? What is your response to that when it comes to, evaluating priority, evaluating the resources assigned to it, just that entire evaluation?
Um, First thing I do is take a deep breath and try
Very
not to cry.
important.
And then just dive in. So for us, every situation is a little bit different. We need to start by getting clear on like what needs to be done, who needs to do the work, and most especially when it needs to be completed. So we start looking at options, and that might mean maybe we pause or slow down some of our projects. Maybe we need to break up the scope so that we can get some quick wins. So we have a team of people who will look at that scope and figure out, okay, maybe if we can do this part now, then that will suffice, and then we can do the rest later. Or we just have to figure out, do we need to bring in additional resources? Do we need to look at third-party partners? So we just look at every scenario a little bit differently.
Mhm.
We have very set teams, so we do not create teams for our projects. We just assign all of our projects to teams. So sometimes that might mean we will, instead of having 3 developers on the current project they're working on, we might be able to pull one out and continue. Maybe they continue to work on that project, and the 2 other developers will work on the new project. So we really do try to be flexible and look at every option under the sun, and then come up with those trade-offs, come up with those recommendations that we have for leadership, and present those to them. Obviously, the ones that we're most comfortable with standing behind, and hopefully one of them will take.
Yeah, I'd say we probably have a very similar approach on our side. But my catchphrase around the office is anything is possible with time and money. So when we look at the different factors,
Very true.
when a must-do project comes in, we have to evaluate: do we have time? Do we have money? What is that? What are our constraints, right, that we're going to be dealing with in those capacities? And often it's no time and no budget. So what that looks like for us is, how do we fit this in with our current plans, right? And we do operate a little bit differently than Melissa and her team, where we don't have set teams. We have a pool of resources, and what we often look at is, what if we slowed something down here? What if we paused here? What are the other mandatories that are happening across the organization right now, and what priorities can be shifted? So and then we can make a team based off of that, or looking at it from that perspective. But so that's where we often find ourselves, is actually a very complex analysis of like, who and what team do we need to make up, especially when we hit constraints on the first 2, which is time and money.
Yeah, the most important ones. How often, with that said, you both mentioned like the trade-offs and do we have to pause? Do we have to slow something down? How often are you recommending and is the decision to completely pause a project that is currently in flight? Is that like a common occurrence?
It is not a common occurrence for us. We do everything we can not to stop projects that are in delivery. We might stop a project that is in planning, but once it hits the team, once they are moving forward with delivery, we try our best not to stop those projects. So like I said, we will slow things down if necessary. We will become a little bit creative, but we do our best not to stop. Occasionally we've had to, but it's not ideal, obviously.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I think it's very difficult when you stop the project to communicate like value back, because it's really lost until something is delivered. So I think one of the things we think about is, how can we get faster to delivery where if it were to have to stop, we've actually delivered at least some value and that isn't lost over several months, let's say, on a project that didn't ship something, maybe quarterly or iteratively.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. One thing I would like to focus on, just because I think that this could be really interesting for people to hear how other people are doing it. Excuse me. What do those meetings look like, or what are those conversations look like when you're meeting with your leadership teams and, the business lines or whoever that may be, when you're saying, okay, this is what you want, here are your options. Is it as simple as, dashboards? Is it a PowerPoint? What conversations are you having in those meetings, and how are you presenting that information? Just trying to get super tactical about it.
So on our we really spent the last year or so kind of streaming that conversation into a lot of conversations along the way. So I think when we look at how we've structured things from all different levels of a project, we've put that conversation more and more at the forefront in standard meetings. So if we think about at the pure project level in our statuses, we now talk a lot more about resourcing and trade-offs of those even within a project, right? And then we've laddered that up all the way through into like senior leadership conversations where, typically what's happening is when a project priority comes in, they would be looking at it and we will present back those options for them. But now it's a lot more clear on all the levels. And I think that's something that we spent the last year really working on and making sure sort of we're bringing that conversation to the forefront. It wasn't part of our narrative or conversations in previous years, which creates a lot of confusion, especially if you have leadership making a decision. That doesn't trickle down always the same way, but now we have clearer decision artifacts that we're putting out. We have clearer conversations at all levels around resourcing and what those impacts are. And I think that's helping us this year as we move into our new projects being set up, having a lot more ability to at all levels have that conversation, right?
Yeah.
I would agree. The past couple of years, we've focused on being very transparent with what capacity we have and making sure that people are aware. Hey, by the way, we only have 20% capacity left for the year. So if you have anything else that wants to come in, things are going to have to shift. So they are very much aware of that as they bring projects to the table. It's not typically the expectation of like, oh, you can just start this next week and move on. So they are aware of that. We have various reports using even Smartsheet so that people, my light just went off, so that all of our leadership can view that at any point that they need to. And then when it comes down to creating those options, we will mostly use PowerPoint at that point, like in the meetings. We typically give a max of 3 different options. We don't want to give them too many to choose from, or spend too much of our time working through the various options. So we will typically have those meetings, set everything up, and occasionally it comes back that they don't like any of those options, so we need to come up with something else. But it is typically very collaborative. It is very rarely, you must move forward with this. I don't care how, go get it done. There is always compromise, and so we work through that in those meetings.
Yeah. It's awesome. It's nice to hear that these conversations around, resourcing and capacity and how that can impact projects and, doing kind of that longer term planning so that way you can say, hey, you're going to have to make trade-offs if you want to introduce something else. I think that sets expectations at, Sarah, like you said, at all levels of just being like, hey, these are conversations that have to be had. You can't just dream something up or just want something right away. It's going to take, analysis. It's going to take some consideration here. So I know, when we had spoken, I think that was last week or so, or maybe 2 weeks ago, we had also mentioned, we had talked about the different like planning cycles and how, it's not just reviewing what's coming in, midstream, but also, just continuously reviewing the plan that you have in place. So what are your current planning cycles when it comes to reviewing the plan that is in place at that consistent level? And what changes have you made to that in the last year just to adapt to these constant midstream items that are coming in? Are you having meetings more frequently about your planning and your delivery? Just curious to know about that.
So the way that we have it, we have three separate pillars that our business, we have three business owners over those pillars, and they get to decide based on the KPIs. That's how the pillars are broken up, which projects are going to move forward. They are responsible for going through their backlog. Any new project that comes in, they will prioritize it within that backlog. And then we meet monthly and actually typically bi-weekly with them and go through and figure out, are there new things coming in that we are not aware of that haven't been submitted yet? Or are there things within the current backlog that needs to be reprioritized? And so our planning cycle is really just projects come in. We don't, a long time ago, we used to have, okay, we are only going to plan for the next quarter. We are planning years out at this point. So,
Yeah.
and it's all based on that priority and based on that capacity. And so it does help us. We're able to kick off delivery a lot faster as we're just doing it iteratively. And which then obviously helps us deliver value and faster to the I can't speak. I'm sorry. It allows us to deliver faster and provide that value quicker to the business, instead of having to just shift constantly, and everything must be defined upfront. So doing it iteratively for every single project that comes in and just going with the flow has really helped us speed things up.
Yeah.
On our side, we've moved to like a quarterly review at like a very senior leadership level. But similar to Melissa, we've kind of got groups of projects where we have some that are strategic and those ones really never get touched and pivoted from. We have compliance, those are things that are must-dos and need to be addressed. And then in the middle, we kind of have what are our business goals and objectives? And those are the ones that we're looking at and can play with and shift with. So I think a lot of the times with those, it's around, what priorities exist. And those at a quarterly level sometimes isn't enough, right? We'll get something in midstream. I think last year with automotive, we saw a lot of that coming in. Had to make some system changes along the way. So we find a way. And we pivot based off of approval cycles that need to happen whenever it might happen. And I just think on like the granular level, we've moved to probably having more deeper conversations on a weekly level because things shift not just at the high, within the projects, right? And I think that's still an area that we need to spend time. And I've been spending a lot more time over the last year too, because even in a project level, things are moving around as always.
You're telling me it doesn't go exactly as planned? Okay. Okay, so I really want to pivot us to more of that like demand planning and then capacity planning and really what's happening when the demand is exceeding the capacity that you have for people, for roles, for skills. So I want to pivot to that direction just because sometimes, the dare I say, the math isn't mathing. It just doesn't work out. So in these conversations and in your role specifically, what happens when that demand is exceeding capacity? How are you explaining what those constraints are and really trying to get everyone to understand, like, we literally cannot do this for this reason, or, this is why this has to happen. So, what does that look like for you both?
For us, we're just trying to be as transparent as possible, constantly letting everyone know which teams have availability and which ones don't. And we will tell people up front, hey, by the way, if you need anything on our mobile app, that will probably not happen this year unless it gets prioritized above the current projects. So we have let all of our business partners know which ones of our domains just it's not going to happen because they truly are focused on other projects. And actually, we try never to say it will never happen because, again, we can provide options. We can reprioritize if necessary. They just have to decide if the value is there for us to shift those resources over to something else. And that does make it a little bit more difficult when we do have teams and domains who are available to do work, but none of the work is coming in for those teams. So we will also kind of spread the word like, hey, do you have anything for our revenue management group? Do you have anything for our data group? And then try to find those projects and help them shift their mindset, be like, oh yeah, that project that I had wanted, but I thought this was a higher priority. I can get that done now. Great. So we try to move those forward a little bit quicker. But the key thing is constantly letting everyone know what the capacity is so that they aren't surprised when they come in with a new project.
Yeah.
And I think, well, transparency is definitely key. I think the other thing we've tried to communicate in recent, like the last year or so, is really around what the lead time needs to be if you are shifting a skill set, right? Like we do have, the pool of folks. They are typically always kind of working towards something. We can shift that, but if it kind of goes outside the boundaries or everything is critical and we're missing a specific skill set, we've tried to make it clearer for folks. Hey, if we need to bring this in, we will need this like 6 weeks lead time to make sure we can pull the right people for a project, right? So sometimes that's part of the trade-off discussion that we have to have is which project can maybe wait until that backfill can come in. So sometimes it's horse trading on those things too, right? And we're just trying to be as clear as we possibly can with all of our stakeholders about what this all means.
Yeah. One thing I'm curious too is, Sarah, you bring up the lead time when like the skills need to pivot. Is how closely are either of you working with like your talent acquisitions or HR teams when the decision is made, hey, maybe you need to contract this out, or maybe you need to hire for this, and the budget is being made. How are you working with those teams to make sure that you are hiring, really defining that job description and making sure that you get the right skills in the door? Are you working with them?
We work more with the technology leaders and let them know that more projects are coming their way. They have received additional budget. Please go out and hire some people and we try to let them know the types of projects that are coming in so they know which teams the resources would need to go on. But we just kind of let them know that the budget is there and then they go off and do the hiring.
Makes sense.
And I think that's similar to us, except for I sit in the technology lead space as one of those pillars of the technology lead. So I would be responsible. And what we do is we go out to find the right resources, and where we see, overlap in skill sets, we try to make sure, hey, how can we create breadth of technology spaces where we feel like we can do that in order to have coverage in some areas and make sure people are able to move, I guess, between some of the areas. It doesn't always happen, but as much as possible.
Yeah. That makes sense. I think that's always so interesting because it's like the projects that are being demanded, the work that's being demanded, like that's telling you almost exactly what you need, and that flows very seamlessly with, you're the workforce planning and the HR side of the house. So it's just really interesting to see how people are working together, across those departments. So earlier we had talked about, top down and bottom up. So knowing that there are things changing within projects themselves, but also these top-down things are coming in. When it comes to your resource forecasting, how are you managing both of those items from that, maybe that role or skill level at the top versus like the individual person at the bottom? How are you making sure that, you're managing those things at the same time?
We have meetings every month with each one of our domains. We go through all of their teams, everything that is assigned to them, and we talk through all of the allocations that we currently have. Is this project extending? Will you be able to complete the work by this time? Do you need more resources on that project than we initially thought? So we do that with the teams and the leaders of those teams every single month. So we know how the capacity is working, when capacity will free up. Sometimes they're going to finish a lot earlier. And I was like, oh boy, great. Then I need to go find these other projects so that we can get going, because we do need that lead time, the 6 to 8 months for, not months, weeks for planning, so that we can get the projects continuously moving forward. And so those meetings have been extremely helpful. And the reporting that we provide too is great, because if something happens off cycle of those meetings, I do have some leaders that will reach out and say, hey, I was looking at the allocations, just so you know, we just made some major changes, and we either need more time, things are going to come in. We have our project managers and program managers who will continuously let us know as well if any dates are shifting, so then we can find out if we need to shift those resources. And that's what helps us the most to figure out when we can pull these other projects in. Because again, we can make a great plan of saying, okay, in 2 months, this team is now going to move to this project, and then everything will move smoothly after that. But if the current project that they are working on, nobody's going to say, oh, well, your time is up, so just stop working on that project and start working on this new one. So we just have to adjust for that. And those monthly meetings definitely help with that.
Yeah. It sounds like you have a lot of buy-in. Like a lot of people are bought into the importance of resource allocation and understanding what that is, which is awesome. I feel like that makes those conversations a lot easier potentially. So that's awesome. Awesome to hear.
It's taken some time, but we're getting there, and it is really great when everyone has that buy-in.
On our side, I would say what we're looking to sort of expand in our visibility. A lot of what Melissa says is true in our environment as well. But I think getting clarity at a more granular level is something that we're trying to figure out and report on, in terms of what is the forecasting compared to actual time being spent. So we look at things like benchmarks of go lives and when dates and things like that are shifting. That we look at on a weekly basis. We expect teams to be looking at their team makeup each week and making sure that they're letting us know if they forecast anything that's going to extend or come back. So all of that is happening. But I think what we're at a leadership level wanting to look at more is, how can we see where the time is actually being spent? Because I think in a way that, Melissa, you guys have a team that kind of goes on a project. We have resources that might be working on 1 or 2 or 3 projects at a time. We try not to go to that level, but
Yeah.
we do have, especially, when you get to, a solution architect level, and they're looking at maybe 2 or 3 projects, and we've got them allocated, but maybe one project's like taking up all of their time and they don't actually get to the others. And we're trying to find a way that we can catch those things a little bit earlier, so that we're not, over committing our team, but also so that we can make sure that each project's kind of getting what it needs. Because we do find we get some of those challenges in just the way that we work.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. And I feel like too, I often talk with people who, one, they're introducing, the time tracking concept and whatnot. And that is such a key thing. I think knowing how much time people are actually spending on, the projects that they're assigned to and the works that are assigned to, it's such an unlock because you can then say, okay, did we overcommit? Was our planning just off and we now need to adjust there? And I think too, it really, really helps with anything in the future. Like, hey, this style of project, this person on it took this much time, these deliverables ran up against each other, which was, made, they were working overtime or whatever that may be. So I think that that's really important when, especially in the setup that you guys have, Sarah, just knowing like how resources can be, not just on one team, they are working on multiple projects throughout.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I really want to pivot to the strategic work. So, the things that are really moving the organizations forward versus operational. I talk with a lot of people too on, you need to account for the operational to keep the lights on, business as usual stuff. That has to happen. But the strategic priorities and projects often are like dare I say, like the shiny object that people really want to focus on. So when you have, major priority come in, or something, just needs more of those resources, how are you protecting that operational and lights on work? And are you protecting it?
So
We
on
do
our,
our best.
go ahead.
Sorry, Sarah,
No, go
you go
ahead.
ahead.
I was just going to say on our side, like I had said, we kind of created these buckets. So we try not to touch those kind of key areas. So we do protect them. And it's really important for us to make sure we're maintaining, especially in the operations space. We have to keep the systems running and make sure that from a compliance perspective, we're hitting, in security, we're not negotiating on kind of those things. So we don't even put it on the table, and unless it's an absolute like last resort. But really, we try to protect that those areas at a lot of cost, and really focus in on that area that we've identified as negotiable.
Agreed. We do something very similar. We're very intentional how we split that team capacity. Each team has a different percentage, but on average, it's about 70% of their time. We want them to focus on all of our project work. But then that last remaining 30%, that's the admin time, resilience, enhancements, any other type of operational type thing that needs to get done. And that's what helps us protect the day-to-day work, helping make sure that we are not overloading the teams, and making sure, obviously, if something breaks, things are going to shift. Even that 70% might have to shift to something if something breaks, but for the most part, project and everything else. And our reporting and time tracking helps with that as well, because we can look at those trends and say, hey, you guys have a project, but you're spending a lot of time on these special little enhancements. What's going on there? We need to shift priorities. Remember, projects always come first. And so that's kind of how we do it. And looking at that reporting will help us know how things are what reality is.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the questions that I often get from people who are, just starting out with their resource planning journey or really trying to understand what that balance is. So, Melissa, you had mentioned 70% of the time is reserved for that project work, so leaving 30% for that operational. I like to say, like, resource management is more of an art than a science. There has to be some leeway there. So just curious to know that 30%, you track the actuals, you have the time there, but is it understood throughout your organization, like, hey, these are our best estimates? Like, we're going to estimate that 30% is going. And how did you guys come up with that number? How are people okay with that kind of like that flow of, this is just the expectation, but maybe not reality?
I think we came up with the number mostly if there was a team of, 4 people, we would say, okay, we need 3 developers doing this and then 1 developer doing this. But rather than stating the very specific developers that, you know, this one only gets to do lights on stuff and all of these get to do the fun, shiny projects, we just came up with a percentage so that all of them can do it. And it just kind of rotates. And however the team wants to manage that is completely up to them. And so we obviously want to make sure that most of our time is going toward that project. And so, but we set those numbers at the beginning of the year, and we can be flexible. There are times where it's like all hands on deck, like, sorry, no enhancements, only if something breaks will you do any type of lights on work, but you just need to focus on this project. And on the opposite, if the teams don't have projects, that gives them opportunities to work through their backlog of tech debt, any other types of things that they need to work through. So we try to balance it. We want the numbers to match as much as possible. We have goals associated with that. And we budget based on the budgets that we give our pillars is based on hours. So we take that 70%, we multiply it by the number of working hours, the number of people we have, we split that up. And so we do have those goals to meet. And so we're like, hey, you didn't work very much on projects, but you had some. Help us understand, help us shift. And if there was an emergency one month, then we say, okay, then maybe this next month you can focus a little bit more on the project to help us get back on track. But it's just, it flows and changes constantly with that as well.
Sensing a theme.
Right.
Sarah, what about you? How are you? Do you guys have like a set, keep the lights on, you know, percentage that people are expected to work, and especially with your plans? Do you guys have that?
So we, I think just based on our structure, we have we make sure we have a team set aside that does the sort of operational side of things. And we've gotten over the last little while a little bit more, I think the themes are change and transparency. We've got a little bit more transparent about, you know, where work sits in what team and what constitutes like an enhancement versus a project, so that it allows leaders to make the right trade-off discussions, right? So we have a certain set of capacity that's available in an operational setting. And so we can only do so much in that space. And if something doesn't get approved as a project, you know, somebody might try to slip it in under, you know, operational. So we really try to have more open conversations around the overall capacity between the two sides of the teams, and thinking about, okay, where do your priorities really sit? Does this really need to go through? Because you've already got this project and you haven't identified this as scope within your space, right? So I think it's based on our setup. This is kind of how we've been structuring it. We used to have it such that we would have some capacity within the project teams, but what we would find is that line would get a little bit blurred for us because we don't run it in a total pure product model way where, you know, I think it becomes a little bit, the lines are getting a bit muddy for us. So it became a lot easier when we just said, hey, this is project team, this is systems running team. And there's a clear line and there's a clear delineation of what gets routed to which team, and an approval process for both sides that go up to the same leaders to make the decisions on their technologies to kind of what's our overall priority, right? So.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so we have about 15 minutes left here, and I really want to talk about looking ahead for 2026. So what have you learned from 2025 and the pace of change that came from that year? And what are you doing differently? What were those takeaways, and what are you applying for 2026? Is it, dare I say, better forecasting, the pipeline visibility in terms of, you know, what could be coming down that, you know, maybe is not part of the current plan? Sarah, I would love to, you know, see what your thoughts around like the AI piece of it as well, with the whole project and portfolio and resource landscape. So overall, what are you looking to do differently into 2026?
I think for us, we're going to continue. I'll just start with the continues. I think we've built better processes and transparency throughout our project cycles and planning cycles that we will continue into next year. I think what we are looking at is how do we use AI as sort of a decision and delivery accelerator? What kind of information do we need to be able to make decisions on the fly, and what kind of planning and scenario mapping goes into each time we're asked to pivot, and how can we better leverage AI as a technology to help us get to those decisions a little bit quicker, right? So when we think about having to present options back to leaders, that can be labor intensive sometimes. You're digging into data points and figuring out who's on what and what their actual where they actually sit in this project. Are we in UAT over here? So we might have some capacity. Like there's a lot of digging that we might do to actually present some options here to keep everything going and to keep all things moving in an optimal way. So how can we better leverage the data points we're getting from our different systems to create something that we can look at and pivot more quickly using AI? So I think that will definitely be something we're looking forward to, trialing in this next year.
Yeah.
And I think we're trying to do a lot of similar things. Right now, we're focusing on early visibility. Within a week that a project, I exaggerate sometimes, within a week that the project is approved or prioritized, I will try to go in and list out exactly when realistically the teams could do the work. Realistically might be 2027. So I put that in a report that all of our leadership has access to, and they can go in and see what's happening with that project. And if it is really far out and I know it's a priority, I will bring it to them right away. But this report also just helps everyone understand immediately, okay, I don't like those dates, so let me go talk to some people, figure out if this needs to be prioritized a little bit higher, and then they'll come back and we'll go through all of those options. But being able to inform them as soon as we know the ROM for the estimate, or the ROM for the project, how much time it's going to take and which teams are needed, that has really helped with priority. And sometimes the business will look at it and say, okay, well, I really wanted that one done, but I understand. We'll put that one down on the lower list, but just if you could set aside capacity so we can do it next year, that would be great. So that has really helped us. We are also trying to look at just the progression of our estimates. A lot of times our initial estimate comes in extremely high, and then when it comes down to it, we didn't need that much time. So we try to figure out, we're trying to figure out what happened and how we can adjust with that. So then the next project that comes in that is very similar, we can point out, again, if that estimate comes in really high, but remember, last time you said it was that high and it came in this way. So is this one different? Can we push back on that estimate to have it be a little bit more realistic? Because the problem with a huge estimate is then when we find out the team is not needed, it's still going to take us about 6 weeks to get them another project that has been planned out. So that's why it's really important. And so this next year, we are trying to focus on that a little bit more and look at those estimates and see how they compare. And I am hoping that AI will help us with a lot of that so that we can show some trends and help figure out how we can estimate a little bit better.
Yeah. Yeah. So that actually brings me to, we had a question in the chat here. And I think, talking about this and talking about using AI and just like the reporting that we're giving too, I think it all kind of flows together. How are you getting alignment on what is the source of truth? So obviously you guys are users of Tempest, but and knowing, you have allocation data there, you may have timesheet data there, the actuals, mostly you mentioned Smartsheet as well. How are you getting alignment on the source of truth for this data? And also getting buy-in on like, hey, this is quality data as well. What has been your experience with that?
I think for us, we've got our systems where we would consider source of truth. Now, the question on quality of data, I think that 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 a lot of it comes, maybe from user input when you're talking, estimates versus at a let's say a resource level, their estimates where they're actually spending their time. That depends a lot on them and them putting in the data. So we spent a lot of time trying to focus on making sure that gets better. But my sense of that is it's not until it becomes the metric by which we're looking at things and it becomes real to get that data up to that like next level of standard. And by that, I just mean, it's one thing to say, put it in here and get it, make sure it's right. It's another thing to say, we're tracking this and making decisions off of it. So when it's wrong, that's going to impact you and impact other decisions that get made. And I think when we hit that layer, I'm hoping what we'll see is that quality change in the data points, because it's now going to have real consequences and mainly on them, saying,
yes,
you're over or underutilized and we've got to figure this out with you. So I think in that way, we're trying to get to that faster so we can work to clean up the data a little bit more. But I think source systems is clear for us.
I would say the same. Our Tempest is the source of truth for our forecast, for our actuals. And when we're working with teams and I show that they have capacity, they're like, but we're really busy. Okay, help me understand what you're doing because I show that you are not. So we need to figure out what you're working on. And if I am not aware of it, then that should not be the priority. Or we need to get that project that you are randomly doing submitted so that it can be officially part of the system. But it is just as good as the data that we receive. So if we are not receiving proper estimates, that does not help us with figuring out what capacity is available. If we are not getting correct timesheets, and so a lot of the time when I'm talking to people on the teams, they say, well, why do you keep giving me so much work to do? I'm like, well, one, it is your job, but two, you are constantly putting all of your time into that resilience bucket. So that means that you're not working on projects. I can give you more projects to work on. And they're like, oh, but I am working on projects. Okay, well, it would be really helpful if you charge that. So it's a lot of just education, helping people understand why timesheets are important and not that I just randomly want to know what they are working on. Because for whatever reason, there are people who do think that the PMO just wants to keep tabs on them. And so it's really helping them understand that it helps drive decisions, it helps drives financials, and it's extremely important that they are accurate with what they are reporting to us.
Yeah. Yeah. I like to focus a lot of times on like the what's in it for me. And then, for the person who, is really executing on that project and their work is contributing to that delivery, they may see it as micromanagement. Why do you want to know what phase and what I'm working on and all of these things? And I think it's really important to understand, well, like it helps with the budgets, it helps with the projects we can take in next year, and it helps make sure we aren't giving you too much work. Like I think the what's in it for me at every level is really, really important there.
Agreed.
Awesome. All right. Well, there's a few other questions here, but I will take some of them offline. So let's go ahead and close this out with what is one mindset that you think the PMO in general needs to make in order to, be, have that agility for all of the change that's happening?
I would say embrace the change. It's going to be there. So just learn to accept it, learn to understand that it's a part of you, and the goal isn't to have an absolutely perfect plan. It's making the better decisions as things shift. So just be flexible and embrace that change. Took me a while to get there, but change is my friend.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's really about, from my point of view, I was thinking about this. It's about how do you optimize for the adaptability that you need to have, not for certainty, right? How
Yeah.
can you create structures that are clear, communication paths that are clear, understand, your team limits and things like that. The better picture you have of those things, the more adaptable you can be, and optimize quick decision making, right? So
Yeah. Yeah. It's so interesting how sometimes when you think of, being able to be what I like to call lowercase agile, often it requires processes and structure. So you know where you can veer off and how you get back on track when you need to. All right, awesome. Well, Sarah, Melissa, thank you so much for your time today. I hope that you guys enjoyed being here, and I hope that all of our attendees found this helpful as well. Like I said, a recording will be available. Everyone who registered will get a link to that. And with that said, thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
thank you.
Thanks for listening to What's the Plan, hosted by me, Samantha Varner, and produced by Kyle Wirtz. This podcast is brought to you by ProSymmetry. If you have questions, episode suggestions, or just want to say hi, we'd love to hear from you. Email us anytime at whatstheplanpod@prosymmetry.com. Until next time, thanks for tuning in, and we'll talk to you soon.